Welcome everybody. We've got people joining slowly. Obviously, we'll carry on no matter how many people are in because it is available on YouTube later. And we've got an international audience today, so welcome, people that are from outside of the UK. We're just talking about Time for Geography there, which is actually one of those free amazing resources that exist for geographers. A lot of what we're talking about today are things sort of outside direct geography, but they're still great to use. But actually, Time for Geography, if anyone hasn't used it, they're short, sharp clips which are very up to date and amazing for teaching all sorts of topics. But just a few minutes here and there, but are very precise and to the point for what you need. Things like showing coastal erosion, etc., things like that, they are absolutely brilliant. So if you didn't know about those already, definitely something to be looking at. I've just submitted anything before. So on the agenda today, we have got 5 amazing speakers. So we've got Sophie Wilson, who is going to be talking about easy to use GIS. We've then got Fiona, who is going to be talking about Earth learning ideas and the Pete Loader resources, a link to that. Got Andrew from FT Financial Times for Schools, who is from New York, talking about their resources. We've then got Hywel, who's talking about, it's a British, I'm going to get this one right, because it's a British Geomorphological Society. Is that the right way around? Because I know there's different, I just keep getting myself confused between who does what. And then Brendan, TeachMeet master, who's going to finish us off with a little bit more along the GIS angle. So welcome if you haven't already been to any of these sessions. They are all available on YouTube under the Geographical Association. To watch back, please suggest them to other people as well. We've done different topics on each half term. So I'm going to pass over to Sophie. Sophie is a teacher trainer at St Mary's University. Got her information on the screen there. And she's also part of the ICT special interest group within the
Association.
Thank you. Sophie, over to you.
Oh, hello. It's with great pleasure that I share these up and coming new resources that are going to be available. Hina asked us to talk about interconnectedness and synoptic thinking and also geographical understanding. And when I looked these up, it said interconnectedness meant different geographical phenomenon. And then it said synoptic talked about a weather map and sort of the current situation and atmospheric conditions. And when I looked up geographical understanding, it basically said knowledge about the Earth. So I thought, perfect, Ollie's GIS teaching about climate change using GIS would be perfect for this. So what I want to do is introduce you to this up and coming course, but it's also a lovely depository of free resources. It's open access online training course, which is free for all teachers. I have at the end, I have a QR code where you can have access to the preliminary resources, but there will be more coming because it's going to be fully launched at the end of March. So what is it about? If you look at this, you'll see that it looks at both the sort of knowledge and the pedagogy behind teaching the GIS, and then also links to cognitive load and climate education. And it's got links to some really great resources that are available for free across the internet to support the teaching of climate change through geography. So in this course, the first introduction introduced you to really the worth of GIS and climate change and why it's so problematic for people, the fact it's complex and people feel uncertain about teaching about it, and above all, the importance of looking at climate as part of a system. So if you click on some of these links, hopefully you can see my mouse, you can go through to curated resources that are available in other places in order to have a look at some parts of this. This video here is a little introductory that sort of sets the scene for why it's so important. Particularly teaching about climate change is characterised by really the complexity and uncertainty of it, and schools need to really update their resources, but often are a little bit worried about it. For example, if you look at climate as a system, this links to a lovely Centre for Science Education resource that explains the basics of of climate systems. Now, interestingly enough, I piloted this with my trainee teachers, and that was one of the things they really said they felt really unconfident about was the actual science behind it. So within this course, we've integrated links to this really good curated resources. So schools need to teach about GIS and about climate change. And one of the things we've looked at here is the underlying pedagogy behind it. Of particular importance, I suppose, are the three types of knowledge: the knowing what, the knowing why, and the knowing how. And I think this is very nicely done by Alistair Hamill in pulling them all together. But it also links to the SAMIA model, and with these steps, which coupled together explain really the knowing what and the knowing why. And in the corner here, we've got a lovely link to a national tree survey that's been done that you might want to share with your students and do it in your own classes or something similar yourself. So if we move on from the theory, this section looks at climate change, and it really outlines some of the issues and has linked to some really nice resources that are available. So if I click on here, hopefully I get through to the page, and what you'll see, it's got like a lovely My Eco Track fact book, and then here we've got some nice little links about how we know that it's real, climate science for teachers, addressing the climate crisis,
We'll be quick.
and sort of the signs, the vital signs of the planet. And if you're interested, it's a lovely project here where you visit the Tech Ed project, which has got even more really useful resources for free for you on the internet. This carbon map is also a really useful resource when you're trying to set the scene for what's involved with climate education. So if we move on to the next section looks at really what GIS is, and this is a little bit more technical. It's looking at why you would use it and how it really frames a really good way of having a more interactive way of teaching and introducing you to GIS. And it's got some nice videos linked about not only about what GIS is, but also why it unlocks the data and why it's so important. So if we go on to the next section, this is really about the pedagogy behind it. And Brendan, who's on the call as well, worked with me to develop the GI pedagogy project. So what we've done is we've embedded a link to the MOOC there that looks about the steps that we developed and looks about the importance really of combining and considering the pedagogy underlying the use of GIS. Why should we teach it? The ideas for teaching about it are really important in this. So I really like, for example, here we've got why it matters. And if I have a look here, there's ideas of teaching about GIS, particularly to do with climate. What we've got here is, oh, sorry, it clicks back to myself. I don't know why that's happened. What you'll find is there's little links here to other sites. This is still work in progress, I said to you before, so there will be maybe a few issues. What I like here is it gives you links to Esra's sites and resources as well. Sorry, it doesn't on that page. And what it will do is it will link through to those other resources. Okay, so the next one looks at cognitive load, which we're all very familiar with, making sure that we're mindful of this and we make the climate change the focus of our lessons. And we've got a digital resource bank here of different examples of how these step models have been used, and so you can then apply it to talking about climate change. And again, we've got a little bit about the cognitive load. So when we get to the climate education itself, this is a very nice chapter that looks at the climate education, investigates your local area. And here is a really nice little story map that shows you how green is our neighbourhood. And then if you have a look here, there is a lovely set of climate graphs that you might find useful in your own teaching. Now, I'm just going to go back because the links did work and I don't know which ones they were, so apologies for that. If I go through to the web page, I can then share a few things more accurately with you. So if I just click on here, what we've got here is a D3 resources that really help you to think about how you might teach. The little toolkit you might find useful. What this links to is free resources that are available from Esri. And what you've got here is how you enhance teaching and learning. And I really like this little thing called Explore Mapmaker. And if you go to Mapmaker, it's got some climate change resources linked within the it's a bit slow today, within the atlas that it goes through to. So if we have a look at the map layers that are here and available, so if I look here, you'll see it's got all the different topics. So if you want to teach about anything, in this instance, I'm thinking about climate, you click on the topic and it's got the maps that relate to what you want to teach about, which I think is really useful and easy to use. So if I go back to this page again, we've also got a link to the Esri UK site. And again, it's got a very useful, what do you want to do with GIS? Now, I'm particularly keen on this Teach with GIS. And this links also has a little climate section. So if you want free resources and you want to use GIS within your lessons, click on that climate. And what you'll find is there are resources here. This is really useful here with the weather maps that they've got. So they've got dashboards which compare the rainfall, temperature, the snow days. And you can click on what a little area of the UK, or you can go on the whole of the UK as an average. And it's really nice because at the bottom, you've got actually the rainfall between 1971 and 2000. And if you use this slider here, you can actually home in on the flood that you want to look at. So for example, I was looking at Tewkesbury recently. So if I look at 2007, which I think was about here, that was 2015. So maybe here, it's a bit slow today to come up. But what you can do is you can actually link the what you're teaching about. That's 2009, so that must be 2009. This is 2008, so it must be here, 2000. But basically what you do is you go back to the year that you want for that case study, and you can use these sliders to home in on that, and you can also do a little search here to the place that you want to do with your case study. So if I put it in there, you could easily type in here Tewkesbury floods. So not only on this UK site have we got other resources. I know I've got 10 minutes. I love this global app. So why I would suggest that this is a really useful tool for you to have a look at is that it has all the underpinning theories. It's got links to current different resources that are available for you. Now, I said this is work in process, so this is the basics of the course. But what's going to happen is that at the end of March, we're working currently on lesson plans, and there'll be a whole load of lesson plans available for you for different topics within climate education. So if you want to see and keep abreast of this, have a little look. Here's the QR code, and this will take you to this preliminary sort of work in progress basis for this course. But there will be resources for you teaching in school that'll be on the site. They've just got to be curated and finalised. So probably by the end of March, they'll be there. If you want to watch us, follow us on Facebook, because there's the link there to our Facebook page, and we often have up-to-date news about what's going on in climate education, but also linked with GIS, and you'll see on the news page that will be of interest to you. So for example, here we often have contemporary things. So I would suggest you sign up for this and have a look and watch the space, because more resources are coming.
Thanks so much, Sophie, and brilliant timing as well. It sounds like a really good resource, especially with the fact that we know we do need to keep developing our climate change teaching, and looks very user friendly as well. What we'll also do is put the link once it's on YouTube, if you're happy to put the link onto there as well. That would be great. Right, Fiona is resources queen. Written a great book on fieldwork, and somehow does it with 2 young children in tow as well. So Fiona's going to talk about some physical geography resources created by Pete Loader. Over to you, Fiona.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, I do have a toddler sat next to me who decided that just leaving me for 10 minutes was not going to be done. So let me just share my screen with you. And let's have a look at these resources. Can you see that okay, Hina?
Yep.
Perfect. So a website that I come back to every time I am planning some sort of physical geography is Earth Learning Ideas. And if you haven't visited it yet, you may look upon it and think, this website looks really old. There's nothing current on there, because it does look a little bit retro. However, there are so many fantastic ideas in there. Excuse me. Thank you. Which have been put together by the Earth Science Teachers Association. The website was originally set up by Chris King, who really sadly died in 2022. But the resources are still being uploaded by Pete Loader, who you may know as a absolutely phenomenal geology teacher, and he runs a summer geology school as well. So everyone will love your singing, but can you just give me a minute? Is that okay? Yeah, thank you. So like I said, it is an absolutely fantastic website with over 1,000 ideas on there. Anything that you can think of to do with physical geography, there is probably some sort of idea on there to bring to life that particular aspect of physical geography. So each idea comes with its own fact sheet. Some of them have got video clips to go with them as well. So if you're reading through and you're thinking, I'm not really sure on how to do that, there's probably a video clip to help with that. And there are resources there all the way from primary school to through to secondary school. Now, I've practiced some of these with my my eldest daughter, who is 6, and she really enjoys them as well. She thinks they make sense for what she is doing. There's lots of cross-curricular ideas in there as well. So, obviously we've got the crossover into geology, but there's lots and lots of science ideas and maths ideas in there as well. But not only that, there's also some really great CPD on there for teachers too. So when you click into some of the ideas, it will come up with the student resource, but also some teacher CPD to go alongside it. So again, if you're unsure on something, if you're unsure on the mechanics of how something works, you can click through and find it out from there. So like I said, there are ideas for lots and lots of things. Now, this is just one screen of those ideas. So you can click into any of those and then it will come up with 10 plus ideas on how you can bring that specific thing to life. So, just looking through these, there is all sorts in here which you could do with your students. So some of the ideas that I've really liked, I'll go through in a second. If you're still on X, Twitter, Earth Learning Ideas is still on there. You can see some of the most up-to-date ideas as well, and also find out more information about the geology summer school that is run by Pete Loader too. So one of the ideas that I've really liked, and I've used it with year 7 and year 8, is this concept of taking a toilet roll and using it to show the scale of the structure of the Earth. So you need a fairly long corridor to do this in, because the toilet roll does stretch out pretty far. So here are some of my students on the humanities corridor, stretching out the toilet roll, counting out the sheets and writing on various aspects of the different parts of the structure of the Earth. There's a really similar one to this called the toilet roll of time, which looks at geologic timescales as well. In which case you need a little bit more room if you're going to do that one. But my year 7s really liked this, and they said that they could understand the scale a lot more. Some of the pictures that they'd seen of it, it was difficult to judge how vast some of those sections were. So, for example, when they were looking at the lithosphere, they were like, well, where's the upper crust? What's the lower crust? Where's the mantle? Like, what am I looking at here? And they understood then that, there's not just these set bands that they're looking at, that there are different parts, like, if you look at the mantle, we've got the upper and the lower mantle, and they could kind of tell the difference between those. So cheap toilet paper is not the best for this, I will say, because it tends to rip quite easily. But we asked the cleaning staff at our school whether we could borrow some toilet rolls. They were more than happy to oblige. You need at least 64 sheets to do it. But like I said, it's quite a fun idea. My students really enjoyed this, and I made a model one that I unravel as well. So, for example, if I've got a class that perhaps I wouldn't necessarily trust out on the corridor, or I've got a really big class. I mean, the class that I did this with was a little bit smaller. I roll it out, and then they stand alongside it, and they can see the sheer scale of the Earth. The next one that I really, really like which did require some cooperation from the science department, was can we predict a volcanic eruption? And for this, you are going to need clamp stand, clamps, bosses, a mass hanger and some masses, and some party poppers. And it's really interesting to see the difference between how long it takes for one party popper to pop compared to another in the packet. So from just one packet that we had, one of the party poppers took over 20 masses and that thing was just not popping. And then another one went at 13. So it was really interesting to see. And the idea of this is that you work through some slides and students will add or take away masses as they move through the different scenarios. And they can say at any point, right, we're going to stop now, we're going to evacuate our make-believe town or city because we think the risk is too large. So some students will be safe and they'll evacuate pretty soon. And other students will keep going, nope, 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 nope. And then obviously the party popper pops, and that's the volcanic eruption. There's a few different versions of this one on the website. There's one where you work your way through like scenario cards, and you think, are we going to evacuate now? Are we going to evacuate now? So if you don't fancy party poppers, there are some alternatives to that. This was another great one that we've done with our Year 8 class. And this was when we were looking at the viscosity of magma and lava. And you need 2 cups and you need honey in one and some sort of fizzy drink in the other. And it's getting them to think about why are some eruptions explosive and why are some of them effusive. So students would blow into the fizzy drink and blow into the honey. And they'd try to equate that to what that lava may be like and why the eruptions differ. So again, this is a nice visual way to show that. We just kept the cups covered up with cling film and used them for various classes, obviously changing the straw out each time. So we didn't need a lot for that. But this is another really nice idea just to make something come to life. Something slightly different, which my students have also done in biology as well. So we did some soil sampling. They put it into jars, separate and let it sit so we can see the different layers. There's lots of great investigations for soil on there. So we use this with our A-level students. So again, even though the ideas on there aren't necessarily written for A-level, lots of the GCSE ideas in there work fantastically at A-level. So if any of those ideas are interesting to you or you want to know more, please do visit that website. Like I said, there are so many fantastic ideas. I find myself going back time and time again, and they're always adding new ideas as well. So thank you very much for listening, and I do hope that you will visit that. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, it's a website I keep forgetting to check. But certainly, and I love the fact that it's got lots of different things for different age levels as well, which is really, really important because sometimes things like that can be aimed at a certain age group.
And some of the primary ones do work really well for secondary as well. Yeah. It's just sort of, reading through the ideas. And like I said, some of them got alternatives as well. So you can kind of go, right, that one wouldn't work, but there's an idea for the same thing. That one would work really well. So there's some real good choices on there to pick from.
Thank you so much. Okay, next up, we've got Andrew from Financial Times for Schools. So I think going into some, away from physical geography for a minute. So, Andrew?
Yeah, thanks very much. Great to be with lots of fellow geographers, because that was my subject as well that I studied, and of listeners of all sorts of ages. Great to be on this call. And I'll talk about issues that are relevant for physical, but also human geography in this. Let me just share my slides. Oops, can everyone see that? Yep, is that good? Yep. So yes, and so basically I write about these days education. I've been a foreign correspondent. I've done lots of different roles over the years for the FT, but one thing I'm really focused on now is trying to share our content with teachers and students. And a few years ago, although the FT normally has a paying subscription base, of course, we launched a program which allows pretty much any school around the world with students, teachers in that age range for essentially the sixth form, the last 2 to 3 years of secondary school, to have full free access to our content. And that's partly about FT content in general, but it's also, as I'll explain, some particular focused activities and content particularly relevant to secondary schools. Just a quick word on the FT, or the Financial Times. Obviously, sometimes the brand can put people off. We, of course, cover financial issues, partly because you know, it gets to decision makers who are thinking about all sorts of issues, whether it's around climate change or demography or political, geopolitical decisions around the world. You know, all of these things are, of course, fundamentally important to our core decision maker readers, whether in business, in government, in the non-profit world. So the FT, of course, as you see on the left here, has plenty of news and analysis articles on all sorts of international issues. But we also have, you might be less aware of, a whole series of podcasts you see in the middle there, newsletters, and video as well, longer 20-30 minute documentaries and shorter brief news items and analyses on all sorts of topical issues, not least around climate and sustainability. We also have a lot of interactive features, and you can see here there's a whole hub page we call Climate, or Climate Capital, which focuses on all sorts of powerful data, graphics, interactive resources that you can use. So the example on the left here, our climate graphic of the week, looking at the wildfires in LA, all of it mapped and provided in data form for wider use. There's a new, do you see the second item there is a sort of interactive article around electric vehicles. The top right there, we have a whole series of games and simulations, including this one called the Climate Game, where you can play different personas, whether it's as policymakers or activists or business people, to see the challenge of getting to net zero. And then bottom right, just a typical recent example of a lot of the data sets that we present visually, in this place looking at birth rates and fertility rates in different countries around the world. All of it available and downloadable and interactive, and of course, fresh, useful data and statistics, which could be hopefully useful in the classroom. Here's some of the specific stuff that we do for schools. So we try to curate relevant articles. We have some special articles, which I'll show you in a second. We actually run some competitions. We did one with the Royal Geographical Society recently, a student essay competition around climate change. And we're also trying to build communities. So we have a program for teachers nominate individual students as advocates who we engage with more actively. So something useful, obviously, also for their development and CVs. In terms of curriculum enrichment, which is kind of a core area, here's an example. And if you go to our ft.com schools page, you can see all of the resources we present for schools. But one thing we've been doing in recent months is working with teachers in different subjects to map FT content that they find most useful. So you can see, in fact, we've got two of these menus, if you like, specifically for geography. One which covers the core UK curriculum requirements, OCR, Pearson and other, Edexcel and others. So a number of geography teachers will flag up content, will map it to different areas of the curriculum. And then if you click on the individual articles, you can see, you can see from the article on the right here, here's an instance. So the hyperlink is to the underlying FT piece. It's mapped to different bits of the geography curriculum specification, and then the teacher adds 2 or 3 questions or classroom discussion points. So we've got dozens of those articles that we've mapped. So if you're looking for particular articles that other teachers have signaled that could be useful in the classroom, here's a good place to start. And incidentally, if anyone's interested, we'd love to have more teacher volunteers engaging with us to kind of flag up content that's useful and feed in ideas to make what we do more useful. So I talked about that curriculum enrichment. A second area we see the value of our schools program is more generally encouraging media literacy to get students reading about world affairs, and global literacy, so developing critical thinking skills and knowledge of the world. And we're just in the process of launching a third reading challenge. We're working with an external organization called Aberystwyth, and the idea is basically to get students reading half a dozen articles from high quality media, not just the FT as you can see, but others, and then answer a few questions about the content, so to test how far they're understanding what they're reading and reflecting on the quality of the data. And the idea is then those that successfully complete 6 rounds of this reading and answering the questions, we give them a diploma, an exclusive webinar, sometimes with FG journalists and or external experts on different themes. So that's the second area, media global literacy. And the third area is we think more generally the FT can be useful in terms of thinking about the world beyond school, whether it's for further study or thinking about different professions and jobs that students might go into. And we have a mixture of some video resources and a specific advice, and of course a huge amount of content on different individual employers. So if a student's interested in a particular area, or if there's someone coming in for a talk, or if they're going out for a work shadow or an internship or something, lots more information and insights they could gather to help get them informed and to ask questions that might be useful and valuable and help them stand out. So that's the core resource. As I say, the absolute core and around geography is very much thinking about so many of those issues that are fundamentally important to our readers, including an awful lot on natural hazards, around geomorphological issues, around meteorology, of course, and climate more generally, but many other issues, I say, that tick, I think, many of the core boxes of subject areas and try to bring them alive visually, compellingly, and freshly, and linked to whatever's topical and out in the news. So anyone who wants more information, feel free to get in touch, schools@ft.com, or there's my email directly, and there's a QR code there for anyone who wants to go to the Schools Are Free website, which, as I showed you at the start of the presentation, if you go to that page, you can type in your school. If your school is already in the system, and we've got over 5,000 around the world that are, then you can then enter your official school email, and you'll get a link that'll allow you to create an account. If you're not already in the system, you can then, as a teacher or a librarian or a staff member, register your school, and in a few days you should then again receive that enabling link to allow you and your students to create accounts and take advantage of the FT. So thanks very much indeed, and best of luck with the rest of the webinar.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Yeah, so it's really good for super curricular for sixth form, as well as obviously content for lessons. But, you know, I know my school is signed up to it. It just making sure that we're getting students to actually use it and access it, to extend themselves, as well as what they, you know, the basics they need it for. But I love that, you know, company like Financial Times is offering free resources to develop those students, because it's the students we need to become global citizens and know about what's going on in the world. So that sounds like an amazing resource. Thank you so much. Hywel, over to you with the resources that you're developing.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here. Thanks very much for the invitation to talk. I'll just try and share my screen.
So while you're doing that, feel free to put questions in the chat directed to people, anyone that's listening. If you've got anything you need to ask anyone that's already spoken, feel free. Andrew, I think you need to stop sharing your screen so that everyone else can. Is that all right?
Okay, can you see my screen there?
Still got Andrew's up at the moment.
Oh, sorry, I can't see how to unstop it. Unshare it.
There should be
That's
something
weird.
that says unshare.
That's weird.
I can't unshare. I don't know if I can unshare you. Let me see if I can figure out how.
Sorry about this.
All right, I can stop your sharing. There we go.
Oh, great. Thank you.
That's all right. Okay, you should be able to share now.
Yeah. So hopefully you're able to see that.
It's coming up slowly. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, yes. Just to reiterate my thanks for the invitation to speak with you this afternoon and to share some teaching resources that are in development, I suppose, but focusing on virtual field tours of West Wales particularly. And although I'm presenting it this afternoon, this has really been a collaboration with many people listed here, both in Aberystwyth University and in Sheffield Hallam University, and alongside and with funding from the British Society for Geomorphology that I'll talk a little bit about in a second. and the Royal Geographical Society, as well as some others. So just to introduce myself briefly, I'm a lecturer in physical geography at the Department of Geography and Earth Sciences at Aberystwyth University, and I'm a physical geographer by training, and essentially interested in river environments and geomorphology. Generally, I'm a geomorphologist, and particularly interested, I suppose, in flooding, in dynamic river environments, and also, as hopefully will be clear in some of the tours that I'm going to present, interested in the links between geomorphology and society, culture, particularly in terms of historical representations of the landscape and historical representations of flooding, in particular, with one example here from the River Rheidol and the Trefechan Bridge in Aberystwyth having been destroyed in a flood in 1886. But also interested in environmental management as well, and particularly impacts of woodland restoration on rivers. But essentially today, talking a bit about geomorphology outreach and education, and through the British Society for Geomorphology, because I'm currently chair of the Education and Outreach Committee of the British Society for Geomorphology, and looking to essentially raise awareness of geomorphology through things like our pamphlet, 10 Reasons Why Geomorphology is Important, that's available on our website. So essentially, I'm talking with a sort of number of hats on, really, and one of those is my involvement with the British Society for Geomorphology. So these virtual tours that I'm going to present, as I say, are focused on West Wales particularly. Initially, they were designed as a set of outreach resources aimed at the public generally, with funding from the BSG around the time of the COVID pandemic, when digital resources really became much more the focus of many activities in terms of field work and things of that nature. And the aim was really to encourage general interest in geomorphology and general interest in landscapes by people who may be thinking about visiting West Wales landscapes, or people who lived in the area and who wanted to learn more about the landscapes, and to, I suppose, encourage a sense of environmental stewardship through those tours as well, through that educational activity, and generally to increase the accessibility of some of these really inspiring landscapes. And since then, we've had subsequent funding from the Royal Geographical Society to develop these initially outreach-focused resources into more teaching resources for school pupils. So really trying to advocate for geomorphology is something that I'm really passionate about, and something that really was one of the aims of these tours. And I'm not putting this slide up to try and advocate for geomorphology to you, because I know many of you, or if not all of you, will be sort of teaching geomorphology and as part of your curricula, but it really trying to raise awareness of geomorphology as a term, as a discipline, and there were various ways in which it links in with other related fields was really one of the things that I was really that we were really keen to do as part of these tours. So just a word about the British Society for Geomorphology, just as in passing, if you like. There are lots of teaching resources available on our website, which is there, and you can also follow us on X or on Instagram. And the website will also sort of direct you or lead you to really exciting geomorphological research that's done in academia, and also geomorphological applications as well in industry, in environmental management. That might be really interesting in terms of case studies for teaching. So we fund some development of teaching resources and teaching related activities and outreach related activities. Some of those are on our website, but we also link to other resources such as those that the RGS, for example, and the GA produce as well. So this outreach work that we did really built on previous outreach work by my colleague, for example, by my colleague Tris Irvin-Finn, who's a glaciologist in the department here, who he developed a virtual tour of Cadair Idris for his third year module in Aberystwyth, and some story maps developed by Fiona Llywelyn, who's a PhD student in the department, but also built on and acknowledged really that virtual teaching and digital resources have been developing for a number of years, particularly by people like Des McDougall in the University of Worcester, VR glaciers and glaciated landscapes, for example, and of course Antarctic Glaciers, a fantastic website that Bethan Davis is responsible for and has developed over the years. And the resources that we've developed really building on virtual reality teaching platforms that have been developed for architecture, for computer imaging, in the property sector. So we're trying to use those platforms for education and outreach purposes. So we developed 6 tours for 6 landscapes in West Wales. Just a quick sort of image of a few of them there. I'll run through. I'll give you an example of them in a little while. But we try to focus the content on explaining core geomorphological concepts in terms of the processes going on, the evolution, how these landscapes evolved over time. And we also, as I mentioned earlier, try to highlight the importance of geomorphology to ecology, culture, society and history and archaeology as a bit of a hook, really, to get people interested who might be interested in those subjects, to get those people interested in geomorphology as well. And we also try to look to the future and look at climate change implications as well. And just in terms of the features of the tours, they're essentially built from 360-degree image spheres collected by GoPro cameras. Then those spheres are populated by text boxes, photographs, links to further resources. So, for example, there's a really great sort of built heritage and archaeology database called Cove Lane in Wales that we used. And there's also a map that you can open up on the right-hand side of the screen here to help with navigation. So this is what a landing page of one of the tours looks like. This is Cwm D, which is a kind of post-glacial landscape at the head of the Ystwyth Valley. So you can see we have a sort of a README section here, which explains how the tours work and how to navigate through them. We have a text box here, and then links that will take you to the next image sphere. And the tours generally have 10 image spheres each. So you can access the tours by scanning the QR codes on the screen here, or you can go to the Department of Geography and Earth Sciences website, which is here, and they'll be under Geomorphology Virtual Tours, and you can then open them up into the sort of into a full screen option. But these are sort of a work in progress, and we are developing teaching resources to put into these into versions of these tours, to develop new versions of these tours that are particularly tailored to key stages 3, 4, and 5. They can be used to support in-person trips or as standalone sort of resources, but they're not really intended as a replacement for in-person trips. But they do hopefully allow students to explore distant or unfamiliar locations and increase accessibility and inclusivity. They potentially allow for more information to be delivered before and during a field trip, and reflection, I suppose, following an in-person field trip. And there will hopefully be a combination of information and tasks based on sort of data, imagery, and key questions as well. So I'll just stop sharing that for a second and oops, sorry, try and share the tour themselves. So just to give you a sense of what the tours look like, this is Ynys Las and Borth. So this would be the first sort of image sphere of the Ynys Las tour. So you can sort of spin around like that. There's a map here which you can use to jump to a particular scene. So we can jump to the sand dunes of Ynys Las here, and we can open up some images like that. We can open up, sorry, that's another image. There's a text box here talking about the development of aeolian features and sand dunes. So each image here would have a few other photographs and text boxes to be able to explore. So there's six of those to be able to look at. So yeah, sorry, I'm running out of time slightly there, but thank you very much for listening. And if there are any if you do have any feedback, you'd be very welcome. I'd be very happy to receive any feedback that you might have on how these could be used, what kinds of data or activities could be included, and generally any kinds of feedback would be gratefully received. So thanks very much once again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. I think it's really useful to have the virtual tours. I know I find them really valuable for students when we're teaching. My school's by the coast, but to really look at a river landscape from source to mouth, and especially with glaciation. I love teaching glaciation, and for a lot of the country to have that visual is quite difficult. So the virtual tours really bring it to life. I think they're really important. So thank you so much for developing those and sharing them. And again, we'll make sure the links are put under the YouTube clip so they're accessible to everybody.
Thank you.
So that'd be amazing. Thank you so much. Brendan, over to you. So Brendan is also one of our IT GIS specialists, and he's on the special interest group for that as well, and he's always very happy to share his wisdom. Over to you, Brendan.
Thank you, Hina. Let me just find the old share button. Right, are you seeing a beautiful landscape there that's slightly spoilt by my face?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. So that's just the title page really. So we're looking here at some examples of online resources we can use to visualize landscape narratives for changing places, but also non-changing places. I'll come to that later. So the things I'm going to try and whiz through are these free resources, which are favourites of mine. National Library of Scotland maps, NASA Earth Observatory, the BGS Geology Viewer, and also one of these is going to come up again in a second. We've got 3-in-1 free resources showing how you can support a landscape narrative. So all three are free and they just use one after another. So what we're looking at here is how we use geospatial data. I mean, GIS incorporates geospatial, and how we can use it to make it temporal data, what is sometimes known as spatio-temporal data. Now, that's important because that's a very big growing sector of what's done in industry with geospatial in many ways. But also, it's been on the national curriculum for many years. This is the national curriculum from 2013, and I'm just highlighting a couple of passages there. Look at this. How they bring about spatial variation and change over time. Interpret various resources, including aerial photographs and GIS. So we're all familiar with that, but sometimes these things do get a little bit forgotten about. So here's some ideas. Right. We're looking at National Library of Scotland to start off with, and I've located this little place here. This is a landscape narrative for a changing place. Very simple example that anyone could use really. The link to it is down below, so all the links are within the PowerPoint. This is near to Loughborough, and it's in the Midlands, and the River Soar. If we just scan through this video I've made here to show you what's going on, we zoom in on one little part of the River Soar, and this is from one of the National Library of Scotland maps, one of the layers they've recently added called the county layers. So what we can see is how that's changing over the years. So we zoom through there to the 1944 to 74. We don't know exactly when that map was made, probably, let's guess, the 1960s. And you can see this river meander was already becoming closed off to become an oxbow lake. we just go forward a little longer, we can see the same thing had happened there in a map, probably from a similar vintage, different scale. And then if we go through a little bit further to now, this is the outdoor leisure map, 1 to 25,000 map, which is available free on National Library of Scotland, by the way. And you can look at that and see what the contrast is. So if I let that play through, we can see how we can contrast that using their swipe tool as well. Just get that out of the way. So you can see that's the old map. This is the current map. This is the old map from the middle of the 19th century compared to now. And you can see quite clearly how an oxbow lake has developed there. So that is a really great and very, very powerful resource. Thank you to National Library of Scotland. Right, next one, NASA Earth Observatory. There's absolutely thousands of images here that are taken from satellites. They're often been sort of georeferenced, or at least georeferenced with each other. And a good way I've found to look for really helpful images is in the search box here, type view both images. If you do that, you can often get very good comparisons between places, which helps to support this idea of spatio-temporal comparisons. I'm going to show you just a couple of examples. One's about Lake Chad and one's about the Great Solar Wall of China. So if we look at, first of all, this is Lake Chad. This is a NASA photograph from 1973. And I've literally just placed this one under a photo that's a bit more recent from 2017. And hopefully you can see the contrast. Have a look at the location of Lake Chad here, very strategically located at the border of 4 different countries in that part of Africa. Very, very important, but very much suffering from a lack of water. It's in the Sahel region. So the surrounding countries of Chad, Cameroon, Niger and Nigeria, all very concerned about that, and some of the other countries nearby as well. Okay, another example would be building a great solar wall in China. Lots of deserts are being used like this in countries like Morocco, some in India as well, for extensive use for solar farms. So if we just take a little look at this, you can see, and this is straight from the NASA Earth Observation website, and you can see it enables you to contrast using a swipe for 2017 and 2024. You can see the development, and there are loads of examples of these in those deserts. So that's another great free resource. Another great free resource is the British Geological Survey's Geology of Britain viewer. There are 2 viewers. One is sort of a bit more sophisticated, and this one here is a little bit easier to use, which is nice. So try that one there. And I've just put together a quick video clip of me messing around with it last night, trying to show you a few examples of what's available. So if we just skim through that now, you can change the layers to superficial geology or bedrock geology. And obviously this is really important if we're talking about geomorphology. We were talking about that just now, helping students to know what lies beneath our landscape. It's a good idea to change the base map to something quite bland so that the geology stands out. This is just looking at the South Downs, and we get the chalk South Downs here. Superb view of it with the geology overlaid. You see the chalk there and the clay veil with the springline settlements. And we're going to go to another very familiar place to geographers now. I'm sure you can guess where it is as soon as you see it. Okay, Lulworth Cove. So what's going on there with geology? We can put that layer on and have a good look at that. You can click on the layers to actually see what the geology is. That's really helpful. And then here's another random example looking at the Bathurst Down in Cornwall. We've got igneous rocks compared with the rocks that are sedimentary up near the Wash. Okay, so that's all in 3D, by the way, which is excellent. Okay, next one is the 3-in-1 free resources to support a landscape narrative. One of my favourite blogs is London Inheritance. Now, this is run by a guy called David Sweetland. It's been inspired some years ago by his father's stock of photographs all around London, but he does look at other parts of the country as well. So he's comparing now and then a lot. He's done over 600 blogs, 22,000 followers, really good for hinterland knowledge for us as teachers, but also for students. Very good interview with him there if you want to listen to about him, some of his work there. Second resource in this group of three, the National Library of Scotland, which I've mentioned already. That's a good place to start always. Georeference maps and side-by-side viewer, which you'll see in a moment. I've also helped contribute to their guidance for teaching, which is maps for use in schools. There's a link to that there. And thirdly, a really quite new website, which I like a lot, called RePhotos, where you can make your own swipe photos, provided that they are two photos showing more or less the same kind of scene. So how do we use those? So you can upload those images. You can click 4 points on each photo. I'm not going to go into how you do that now. And you can create a swipe image. Very, very good skill to learn as well. So how can those three things support a landscape narrative? This was one of the things that David shared in London Inheritance towards the end of last year about one of his dad's old photos of the River Wye. And this was the photo he took when he went back. So David often goes back and takes photos where his dad was taking photos, maybe in the 50s and 60s and so forth. And you can see there's his dad's photo, pretty good match there. You could use that for analysing things. Now I showed this to some students and they said, what's that thing there? And I didn't know. And in fact, they're right. There's a weird thing just there. So we explored it. And what's strange about it is it's a kind of a gash in the bank, which has been there for probably nearly 200 years or longer. It's a scour in the bank, and there are several of these. And to be honest, I don't fully know why they're there. Hywel could probably explain why. But what we can see, if we just have a look through, you can see what goes on along this bank. And if we match that with the current landscape, that's what it looks like using Google satellite images. But you can see, compare what it looked like about 200 years ago. It's still there, this weird scour on the river. And there's several of them. It's not just a random thing. So another way of comparing it would be use RePhoto. So I put together a little bit of David's photo and of the photo he took to compare them and match them up. And it was quite a remarkable view, really. So you can see here when you've got the swipe, there's the photo his dad took probably in the 50s. And this is the photo he took in just last year. And you can see it's almost exactly the same. So you've got a feature there, which is a bit of a mystery to me, but it should be something you'd think would be very unstable, yet it's something that seems to be incredibly stable. So it's a very, very good example, I think, of dynamic equilibrium. So a place where things are not changing, they're staying more or less the same. So very pleased to share those with you, and any answers on a postcard or email or whatever about those scours. So thank you very much, Hina.
Thank you so much. Definitely things I didn't know about there, and some that I'm going to explore for my teaching of water landscapes at the moment with year 8. So super helpful. I may well call on you for a little bit of advice on how to use some of those though, because I'm still not the most confident person, but I think
Yeah,
using
no
some of
problem.
these resources, it does make it a lot easier to sort of navigate as well, especially the viewers. So thank you so much to my 5 speakers. I really appreciate you giving up your time, especially for those of you that I approached having been partially owned by other people. I really appreciate the fact that you were happy and willing to respond and share. I hope I can give you more opportunities to do so. Anyone that's been listening, if you wanted to use some of the resources, write a blog for the Geographical Association on your use of those resources, that is certainly something that we can do and publish as well. So thank you so much, everybody. The next one up is going to be primary geography in March, and this one will be available on YouTube in the next few days. And what I'll do is put links to the different presentations or websites with the YouTube link. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a lovely rest of the evening, and thank you so much for joining us today.